Scotty, like Pippen, ballin', switch, boy. Too hotty, like kitchen, like I'm water whipping, boy. Fingers itching.
What's going on, ladies and gents, man? I appreciate you guys being here with me today. Lots been going on this past weekend, sports-wise, in my life, everything, man. It's just been super fun. I've enjoyed my weekend. I've got to see family I haven't seen in years. Just a good time, man. But I just wanted to come on here today, guys, and talk to you about a few things. One of the things being the U.S. Open Championship for tennis. Something that caught my eye when I woke up Sunday morning, I seen that the tennis match was played pretty much by two teenagers in a final. And I said, wow, like, has that even, I'm not sure if that even has ever happened or not. But I did my research and I checked into it and it hasn't. So the match, if you don't know, took place Saturday between Emma and Leah Fernandez. Emma Raducanu ended up winning the match 6-4 with the first set and 6-3 on the second set. Raducanu ended up having 3 aces on the match, 1 double fault, 72% of her serves were served, 65% of those on the first serve, 53 on the second. Break points, she was 4 out of 18. Leah, on the other hand, had 2 aces, 5 double faults, 58% of her serves, 56 of those were on the first serve, and 54 were on the second. And break points, she was 2 out of 9. So in all, it was definitely a great match. Emma pulling out the victory. Just a cool story on her. Earlier this year, she was actually tweeting out early about a test she had coming up in high school, and I just found that funny that now she's winning U.S. Open Championships, man. Like, congratulations to her for sure. But I also wanted to give a shout out to Leah. She had a very, very impressive performance, even to get to the championship. She beat the number 2 Sabalenka. She beat the number 5 and Alina, and she also beat the number 3 defending champ Naomi Osaka. So she definitely climbed the charts, and people definitely know her name, Miss Leah Fernandez. She's only 19 years old, so she definitely has a bright future ahead of her. They honestly both do, you know. One's 18, the other's only 19, so they both definitely have a bright future ahead of them. A lot more great tennis I expect out of these two ladies because, like I said, they beat some pretty good competition. So I definitely believe they're here to stay. There's no doubt about that. And after further doing some more research, the only other time that there was an all-teenage final was in 1999, and that match was between Serena Williams and Martina Hingis. That was the only other teenage U.S. Open match that had taken place before besides this one, of course. So yeah, man, just shout out to the ladies, man. Just putting tennis on the map, and like I said, I look forward to seeing more action from those two ladies. So other things that I checked out this weekend as well, man, there was a bunch of college upsets, including my guys. Ohio State took a loss to Oregon 35-28, which I wouldn't call it a huge upset, but an upset nonetheless. Oregon being the 12 seed and Ohio State at the time being the number 3 seed definitely is an upset. I was a little hurt by it, but, we'll bounce back. Rather take the loss early than late in the season. That's just how college football goes, unfortunately. I really wish they would expand the format to at least 8. I'd like to see more as the, basketball NCAA tournament holds almost 64 versus the football playoffs that only hold 4 teams. That's just not enough. There's so many good college teams out there. I just feel like we need to expand that playoff. But that's for another time and another subject. But yes, Oregon did upset Ohio State. Quarterback Anthony Brown went on to throw 2 touchdown passes for 236 yards, 17 completions on 35 attempts, no interceptions. So he had a pretty well-rounded game. They also ran the ball very well. Running back C.J. Verdell had 2 touchdowns, man, 161 freaking yards. Man, we couldn't stop the man, going crazy. And then, as far as just receiving the ball, it was just a collection of many different receivers. You have tight end Webb, Hudson, the receiver. Verdell actually caught a few out of the backfield and scored a touchdown, receiving touchdown. And all in all, just was a tight game, back and forth game. We weren't able to pull it out, of course. But hey, you move on to the next week because the offense didn't play a bad game. CJ threw for over or close to 500 yards. He threw for 484 for 3 touchdowns. He did have one interception, but yeah, he almost threw for 500 yards. So the offense didn't play bad at all. You know, Chris Olave, Smith, Wilson, all our receivers were in the hundreds receiving yards, and all had a touchdown. Besides Chris Olave, but he had 126 yards receiving. So yeah, the offense played well. It was the defense side of the ball that failed us. And I seen Coach was talking and saying that there will be changes to the defensive side of the ball after that loss, which we needed. We definitely needed that stunk. But like I said, rather lose now than later. So like I said, that upset wasn't the biggest upset of the week. We had another one. BYU beat Utah 26-17. As the quarterback for Utah, Brewer only threw for 147 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. They were putting it on the ground most of the game. Bernard, the running back there for Utah, Michael Bernard, he actually ran for 146 yards for 1 touchdown on 12 attempts. So that actually was an excellent game for him. 17-26, like I said, was the final score. Utah being 21 seed and BYU not being ranked, I guess, is why this was up for upset of the week. The quarterback for BYU had a heck of a game. About the same amount of passing yards, but 3 touchdowns and no interceptions on his end. So he was a little bit more efficient. Running-wise, they ran the ball with Tyler Allegar for 27 attempts for 97 yards. That's decent carry to average ratio. No touchdowns on the day for him. And yeah, BYU came away with the W. That definitely should bump BYU to the rankings. I'm not sure where they'll land, but they'll definitely be in the top 25 for sure, I believe. And before I talk about this next upset, Florida State fans, I am not a hater. I actually like Florida State. But can we please come on? 20-17 loss to Jacksonville State. Where do I begin? This isn't a huge upset either, just because neither team is ranked, but it still is an upset nonetheless because Jacksonville State beat an opponent of D1 stature for the first time and stamped the flag in the middle of Florida State's field. Just total disrespect. I just need Florida State to get it together, man. It seems like I'm not sure what they're missing. It's like they don't have that old swagger of the old Florida State Seminoles football anymore. They had Mackenzie Milton starting the game. He went 18 for 31. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of the Milton story. He's actually getting back from a gruesome injury, leg injury, similar to what Alex Smith dealt with, if not worse. So it's definitely good to see the young man back on the field. He went, like I said, 18 for 31, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Corbin, running back, ran for 15 attempts on 109 for 1 touchdown. As the Gamecocks went on to win that game by 3, their quarterback Cooper threw for 242, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He did take 5 sacks on the day, so the Seminoles did get to the young man, but just not when it counted, I guess. Running the ball wise, they really didn't run the ball fairly well with one individual. It's kind of a collective run by committee. You had Jackson, Samuel, and also the quarterback Cooper took off for a couple of attempts. He actually ran the ball 17 times, only for 31 yards, of course. But it nonetheless did keep the defense on their toes. Yeah, man, so I just really feel that the Seminoles have to turn that organization around. I have been hearing talks that primetime Dion may be heading to Florida State. I don't know. I could be wrong. But I just feel like where he's at now, he's kind of just trying to build his rapport as a coach and just, take the proper steps to eventually maybe possibly move to the D1 level. Or he may, stay where he's at. You never know. But with that being said, I just want to see Florida State back in that dominant promised land. Because, like I said, I do like Florida State, and I just hate to see them slump like this, man. But like I said, it is what it is. You move on to the next week, and hopefully these guys can bounce back and get their swagger back. As we move on to the last upset of the weekend, in my opinion, and that is Arkansas beating Texas 40-21. Now, the college world had Texas coming into this season the 15th ranked team, so they definitely had a lot of promise put into Texas this year. Unfortunately, like I said, they took the upset loss to Arkansas 21-40. Quarterback Card for the Texas Longhorns didn't have a good game at all. He went 8 for 15 on 15 attempts for only 61 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions, 3 sacks. He ended up getting yanked out the game for Thompson, who it looks like the Seminoles will be going with Casey Thompson, the quarterback, the rest of the way, or at least for now, to give him a shot and see what he had. He got in the game 5 of 8, only for 57 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. But I've been doing some research, and it looks like he'll be taking snaps for, at least the upcoming weeks here for the Texas Longhorns. They ran the ball decent. Robinson, running back, ran for 69 yards for 1 touchdown. Thomas ran for 44 yards and 2 touchdowns. So they got it done on the ground pretty well, but just wasn't enough as far as defensive-wise because they end up giving 40 points to the Razorbacks. As quarterback Jefferson didn't throw for any touchdowns. Was 14-19 on the day, 138 yards. Again, no touchdowns and only 1 interception. His running backs handled theirs by committee. You had Smith with 75 yards on 1 touchdown. Jefferson actually did a couple things on with his feet and used his legs on 10 attempts for 73 rushing yards. They also have Green, running back, who had 67 yards rushing on 1 touchdown. Sanders also had 50 yards on 1 touchdown rushing. And then you had Johnson, who also had 44 yards rushing on 1 touchdown. So a collective bargain of 4 rushing TDs, none in the air, but like I said, it was getting everything done on the ground. Nothing wrong with that at all. Was playing good defense and running the ball. What more can you ask for? Texas. Man. It's just sad to see these programs like Texas and Florida State that just growing up dominated and just were those key college programs and just see them on the downfall. But I know, like I said, they'll turn it around and get their things together. But hey, that's a part of the college sports, upsets and losing games that you feel like you should have won. That's just a part of the game. Period. So they'll bounce back. Hopefully here, like the rest of the upsets that I've announced. But that's just all I have for the college upsets, man. To move on to my last topic and the last situation, baby, we got to move on to the NFL season. It is upon us. I'm super excited. So, yeah, I just want to kind of just go over a breakdown of my opinion and how I felt about each game. I'm not going to go into 100% total detail of each individual stat, but just, kind of express my opinion of how I felt about each game, because I do have NFL Pass, and I pretty much watched all the games. A couple I had to record, but just a huge football fan, so whenever football season is upon us, I'm just totally locked in. But with that being said, let's go ahead and get started with the recap for the NFL Week 1, man. So we had the Jets travel to Carolina in the anticipated matchup. Robbie Anderson and Sam Darnold going against their former team and just try to get that revenge and just that, hey, why did you trade us type game. And it definitely was a pretty good game. Carolina led most of the way as they took a 16-0 lead into halftime. The Jets definitely picked it up second half, though, as they come out and score 14 in that second half. To a final score of 19-14, Carolina ending it on that last drive. to close out the game. So very good W for Sam Darnold and the Panthers, and look forward to seeing where they go this season. The second game we had was my boys, Pittsburgh Steelers. We traveled to Buffalo, as no one really has us on the map to do anything this year. Pretty much got us a middle of the pack team. 8 to 7 wins is what I'm seeing. But I love it because we experience this every year. People say, "Yo, we're gonna only win 8, 7 games. Ben's too old." Yeah, I've heard it all before. But you still got to play the game. So with that being said, Pittsburgh did travel to Buffalo and end up victorious as a 23-16 victory on the final score. Rookie Najee Harris actually played every single snap, which was crazy to me when I first thought about it. But in the same token, I'm like, okay, we need to get, the rookie some reps under his belt. And, he's young, so it's like he should be able to play every snap. Do I want him doing that every game? No, definitely not. But he definitely did play every snap. Other people that got involved was Claypool had a pretty good productive game. Smith had a couple tough catches. Deontay Johnson actually had a wonderful catch in the back of the end zone that put us up. Josh Allen had a pretty decent game yards-wise. He did throw for 1 touchdown. He had 270 passing yards. Running game, we held Singletary in the second half. First half, he did get kind of loose. He had 72 rushing yards on the day, no touchdowns. We didn't give up any rushing touchdowns, just the one passing. And that final score of 23-16. Definitely was a defensive game. Low scoring game in the first half. TJ Watt had a strip sack that Hayward picked up. And just in all, the defense just looked well polished, man, and just ready for this season. And I'm looking forward to, taking this 1-0 victory and traveling to Oakland next week. And speaking of Oakland, they actually played our rival Baltimore Ravens as they beat the Ravens 33-27 and a thriller in overtime. That game was crazy, and I actually stayed up and watched the whole thing. Definitely was a barn burner of a fight. With Vegas pulling out that victory. Lamar Jackson had 19 completions on 30 attempts for 1 touchdown. He did take 3 sacks. He didn't have a bad game at all. He also led the team in rushing on 12 attempts with 86 yards. Losing their pretty much running back room hurt. Losing Melvin Ingram to trade and, Gus Edwards and J.K. also were injured this year, so they're kind of just trying to pick up the pieces, running back by committee. They recently just signed Le'Veon Bell to their roster as well to help with that. So like I said, the Raiders did come out victorious in that one. Next game, we had the Rams taking on the Bears, 34-14. The Rams look good in that one, and I know a lot of people were saying Andy Dalton needs to go ahead pass the torch to Fields. A lot of fans, of course, calling for Fields to play, but that's just NFL fans. Anytime they have a young quarterback, they want to see him on the field. They don't want to see him getting pushed to the sideline, especially if the team's not winning. Now, if Andy Dalton's handling his business, then that's cool. Let the kid groom. But anytime that a rookie's on the bench and a veteran struggling, you're always going to hear from the fans. So you know how that goes. So we'll stay tuned and keep an eye on that quarterback situation and see how long, they go without Fields and see when they pull the trigger and give him that nod. Let's move on to the next game. We have Cleveland Browns taking on the Chiefs. I watched that game. I caught the end of that game, and I felt like Cleveland definitely should have won. But after that fumbled snap by their punter, I kind of seen the momentum shift, and a team like Kansas City with that firepower, you never want to shift the momentum to them because they can score in a blink, which they did. The very next play after that, they pretty much were already on their own 20, and they ended up marching in and scoring and pretty much held the lead ever since. That play was a big momentum shifter in the game's outcome. Baker Mayfield didn't have a bad game. He didn't throw for any touchdowns, but he was efficient. He was 21 of 28, 321 yards, no touchdowns and 1 interception. Nick Chubb had a fairly decent game on 83 yards and 2 TDs. But in all, like I said, you can't give Patrick Mahomes another chance, and he prevailed with his 337 yards and 3 touchdowns. And then we move on to we have the Dolphins versus the Patriots in a freaking slugfest in a final score of 17-16. Mac Jones, as you know, got the nod to be the Patriots starter after Cam Newton was cut. He didn't have a bad game at all. He had a pretty good game. He had 29 completions on 39 attempts for 281 yards, 1 touchdown, and no interceptions. You really can't ask more from your rookie. That was a fairly good game by the Rook. He also had help on the ground as Damian Harris ran for 100 yards. No touchdowns, but he did eat up some yards to get these guys down the field. Aguilar led the receiving corps in receiving with 72 receiving yards for 1 touchdown. And the boy Tua, I feel like a lot of people lost faith in Tua this year, so I wanted to see Tua kind of pick it up and show the fans like, hey, man, I got it. I'm the guy. As he went 16 completions on 27 attempts for 202 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. Fairly decent game. You never like to see the quarterback turn the ball over, but very decent game. Running backs kind of was by committee. You had Gaskins, Brown, and Ahmad. None of them got over 50 yards rushing, so it kind of was just like a collective bargain by committee. The only rushing touchdown was by Tua on a 1-yard scamper. And rookie Waddle actually got in the end zone, so it was great to see the Rook score his first touchdown. Those Alabama boys, they produce. I will give them respect. I will definitely give them respect. All right, so we have another one in the Broncos and Giants. That's final score of Broncos 27, Giants 13. That game was a toss-up for me. I really didn't know who would win that game. I just knew it would probably be a fairly decent, good game. And it was. The Broncos kind of pulled away at the end, scoring 17 points in the second half to Giants 6 that they only put in the second half. Quarterback Teddy Bridgewater looked fabulous, man. 28 completions on 36 attempts for 2 touchdowns and no interceptions. The man was on fire. And then he had the help of Melvin Gordon running the ball for 11 attempts on 101 rushing yards for 1 touchdown. So they were getting it done in the air and on the ground. Jerry Jeudy led the receivers for 72 rushing yards, no touchdowns. He did sustain an injury. Prayers out to that man. Hope he's all right. Never want to see a guy get injured, let alone a young guy that's just getting his career started. Noah Fant behind him in 62 yards for no touchdowns. So, yeah, they pretty much got it done in the air and on the ground. The Giants didn't get much out of Barkley. As I didn't expect him to go wild because, just coming back from the injury. They ran him on 10 attempts only. Didn't want to overwork him, which I understand, for 26 yards for no touchdowns. His longest run was a 5-yard carry. Jones actually led the team in rushing with 27 rushing yards for 1 touchdown. He did score. His passing stats were 22 for 37. For 267 yards, 1 touchdown, and no interceptions. So the man didn't turn the ball over. So he ran for 1 and rushed for 1. Daniel Jones had a fairly good game. It just seems like the defense just got picked apart by, old Teddy Bridge. All right, so moving on to the next one. Probably the most shocking in this game out of all of them is the Saints dominating the Packers 38-3. Can you say famous James? Like, man, the man was on fire. But I called it from the preseason. I was like, he seems like he's comfortable. He understands the playbook. He understands the offense. He trusts his coaches. And he has a wonderful offensive line. What quarterback doesn't like throwing behind guys that's going to protect them at all times, So with that being said, he went on to have 14 completions out of 20 attempts, which is super efficient for 148 yards for 5 touchdowns. Man, no interceptions. That is a game. as Alvin Kamara handled the groundwork for 20 attempts on 83 yards for 0 touchdowns. Leading receivers was Damian Harris with 72 yards, and 1 touchdown. Johnson, tight end, only had 21 yards but scored twice. So those were 2 great catches by him. And the Packers, man, that's just a shocker to have Aaron Rodgers and all those weapons. Adam Jones around, Devontae Jones, and just Aaron Jones as a running back. It just shocked me to see these guys only score 3 points. And I feel like it's something deeper with that organization, and something's going on with Aaron that he's just not happy. And, I mean, that's apparent by just all the stuff that has been going on with the Packers this offseason. So hopefully they can get it together and, get those things swing around. Aaron didn't have a good game. He 15 for 28 attempts, 133 yards, 0 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Not an Aaron Rodgers type game at all. Leading rushers were Dillon with 19 yards, no touchdowns. Aaron Jones only got 5 attempts for 9 yards. I don't really understand that one either. But just in all, the Packers did not play well, and the Saints played excellent. And that's just what it came down to. So moving on to the next game, we have the Vikings taking on the Bengals. The Bengals came away with that victory, 27-24. A very good game. That game came down to the last minute overtime field goal to win it, as kicker McParsons' field goal attempt was good. It was a 34-yard attempt, so about an average kick. Definitely knocked it right down the middle for the W. That game was a back-and-forth game, as both teams didn't play horrible. It was, like I said, a very, very even match. Kirk Cousins threw for 351 yards for 2 TDs, 0 interceptions. Dalvin Cook ran for a touchdown on 61 yards. Adam Thielen had 9 catches on 92 yards, leading the receivers with 2 touchdowns. So the Vikings had, fairly good mix of everyone getting in on the offensive mix. The Bengals mixed it up a little bit more, as rookie Jamar Chase led receivers with 101 yards and 1 TD. Definitely showed why the Bengals took him in the first round. And Jamar Chase is definitely there to stay in the NFL, and the man can play. I've watched him play in college, LSU, and just to get to see him in the NFL is like, man, the man definitely has talent. Joe Burrow, on 27 attempts, completed 20 of those passes for 2 touchdowns, 0 picks. Great efficient game by him as well. Joe Mixon got it done on the ground with 127 yards on 1 touchdown, no fumbles. So very efficient game by the Bengals. They pulled out the W, and that's all that matters. At the end of the day, no matter how efficient or how bad the game went, ultimate goal is to win the game. So that they did. So to move on to the last couple of games, we have the Jaguars that lost to the Texans 37-21. Rookie Lawrence kind of struggled. He did have 3 touchdown passes, but canceled those out with the 3 interceptions. Played fairly well, but has to, of course, cut the turnovers out. And they also have to develop some type of running game for the kid. Nobody really excelled in the running game. Hyde only had 44 yards. Robinson only had 25. And Chenault, which is a receiver, only had 9 rushing yards due to some probably in and around play. DJ Chark led receivers with 86 rushing yards on 1 TD. So, yeah, the Jaguars just have to, get the rook to understand you got to take what the defense gives you. Sometimes you got to throw it away. You can't really force everything and feel like you can make every throw like how you could in college. So just a learning curve for the rookie. But, he'll get it together, man. The man has enormous amount of talent, so he'll get it. Moving on to the 49ers taking on the Lions. They beat them 41-33, but lost something way more important in the game. They won the game, but lost their starting running back in, honestly, probably the fastest running back in the NFL, honestly, in my opinion. So that blow hurts. But don't sleep, though, because look for Mitchell their backup running back, because he came in the game and ran for 104 yards on one TD. So it didn't seem like they missed a beat in the running game. So we'll just keep an eye on him and see how he does this season, as Mozart is out for the rest of the season with the knee injury. It does suck, but prayers go out to him and a speedy recovery to get him back on the field. Deebo Samuel led receivers with the 49ers on 9 receptions, 189 yards on one TD. That was just a heck of a game. That man went bonkers. But Detroit didn't play awful, not at all. Goff actually threw for 338 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. Running back Williams ran for 54 yards on 1 touchdown. And leading receiving for the Detroit Lions was Hawkins, tight end, for 97 yards and 1 TD. Swift also had 65 yards and 1 touchdown as well. Another anticipated matchup I was looking forward to see was the Arizona Cardinals taking on the Tennessee Titans. That final score was Arizona 38 to Tennessee's 13. Kyler Murray, man, had a wonderful game. He had 289 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, and only 1 interception. He was sacked twice, but all in all, Kyler Murray had a wonderful game. Leading rushing for the Arizona Cardinals was Edmonds on 12 attempts for 63 yards and 0 touchdowns. My boy, James Conner, old Stiller, man, he had 16 attempts for 53 yards and no touchdowns. Kyler Murray scampered in for a touchdown as well on 20 yards. Leading receiver for them was none other than Hopkins, of course, 83 receiving yards for 2 touchdowns. But right behind him, Kirk had 70 receiving yards for 2 TDs. So both of them scored twice, found both his targets, and like I said, man, the Cardinals were locked in that game, played great defense as they held the Tennessee Titans, who recently got Julio Jones this year. It's only 13 points. Tannehill had 21 completed passes on 35 attempts for 1 touchdown and 1 interception. Leading rushing was Derrick Henry for 17 attempts, 58 yards, and no touchdowns. That's a big surprise. The Cardinals do have a fairly good defense, though, as they showed, stopping Henry and Tannehill in that passing game. Julio's first game with Tennessee, he had 3 receptions for 29 yards on no TDs, unfortunately. The only receiving touchdown was caught by receiver Brown, and he had 49 yards on the day. So, yeah, I mean, Cardinals look good. Chandler Jones had 5 sacks on the day. The man played like a Defensive Player of the Year type candidate, man. And if that's how he's going to play the rest of the year, he'll definitely be in the running in the talks to receive that award. Moving on to another game, Eagles versus Falcons in a blowout, 32-6, as the Eagles take that victory. Jalen Hurts had 264 passing yards on 3 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. Leading receiving on that team was rookie Devontae Smith on 71 receiving yards for 1 touchdown. Jalen Reagor right behind him with 49 yards on 1 touchdown as well. And leading rushing for the Philadelphia Eagles was Sanders with 74 rushing yards on 0 TDs and 0 fumbles, of course. Jalen Hurts actually ran the ball 7 times as well for 62 yards. So just a dual threat quarterback, got it done in the air and with his legs. And just looking forward to see what Philly does. They put together a well performance for a Week 1 victory. Atlanta, not too good, or not so good of a performance, as Matt Ryan threw for 35 attempts and completed 21 of those attempts for 0 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. Was sacked 3 times. Leading rushing for the Atlanta Falcons was Patterson with 54 rushing yards on 0 touchdowns. Leading receiver for Atlanta was Calvin Ridley with 51 receiving yards, on 0 touchdowns. Rookie Kyle Pitts did have 4 catches on 31 yards for 0 touchdowns as well. Look forward to seeing him get incorporated in the offense a little bit more. You just don't take tight end in the first round to not utilize his abilities. So I just look forward to seeing where Atlanta goes as far as using him more on the field and just seeing where the season goes with all these teams. As we move on to the next couple of matches, we had Seattle taking on the Colts as they come out victorious 28-16. Seattle did their thing. Russell Wilson, looked like Russ on 254 passing yards, 4 touchdowns with 0 interceptions. Also had help on the ground with Carson, 91 rushing yards for 0 touchdowns, but did, eat up a lot of yards on the ground. Leading receiver for them was Tyler Lockett on 4 receptions, 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. Right behind him is DK with 4 catches, 60 yards, and 1 touchdown as well. Seattle just looked like Seattle. Pete got them boys rolling early, week 1, and that was a, finally good dub for them and just a well-tuned all-around victory. The Colts didn't look horrible. Carson Wentz actually threw for 251 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. Rushing for them was Taylor, who led with 56 yards on 0 touchdowns, and he had Nyheim Hines right behind him with 34 yards and 0 touchdowns. Leading receiver with them was actually Taylor as well with 60 yards on 0 touchdowns. Pascal only had 43 receiving yards, but he did score twice and did find end zone twice, which is always a good thing for your receiver. All right, so then we move on to our last 2 games. The Chargers took on Washington, beating them 20-16. The Chargers defense came through at the end, giving the ball back to their offense to finish the game out. Washington has to get the quarterback situation figured out as their starter went out and may be out for quite a while with that hip injury. I do hope that Fitzpatrick is able to bounce back because I like Fitzpatrick. Right? He's a quarterback that no matter what situation he's given, he's always going to give you his all. And you got to love people like that. But Heineke didn't come in the game and have a bad game at all. He actually threw on 15 attempts. He completed 11 of those for 122 yards on 1 touchdown and no interceptions. So he came in and, picked up the slack and definitely showed that he's ready to, give these guys a couple W's, if not finish out the season. Leading receiver for them was McLaurin with 62 receiving yards, on 0 touchdowns. And leading running back, of course, was Gibson, 90 rushing yards on 0 touchdowns. And as we cap up the week 1, you have the Cowboys and the Buccaneers that opened up the Thursday night game for us. Of course, the Buccaneers took that W 31-29. Heck of a game. You just can't give the ball back to Tom Brady at the end of the game, as we all know. But hey, that's just football, and that's the Tom Brady effect. As Tom Brady takes down Dak Prescott, who actually looked excellent in that game. Dak, on 58 attempts, completed 42 of those on 403 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, and only 1 interception, and only took 1 sack, and had a passer rating of 101.4. I mean, you couldn't ask no more from Dak, and you couldn't ask no more from a quarterback coming back from an injury and dealing with a shoulder injury. He didn't show any signs of any of that and played well. Leading rushing with them was Ezekiel Elliott with 33 rushing yards, 0 TDs. And then you had Pollard right behind him on 3 attempts, only for 14 yards on 0 touchdowns as well. Leading receiver was Amari Cooper with 139 receiving yards on 2 touchdowns. CeeDee Lamb had 104 receiving yards and 1 touchdown. Now, Tom Brady had 50 attempts and completed 32 of those as he threw for 4 touchdowns and had 2 interceptions. But I will say one was going into halftime and the other was deflection off a screen. So, all in all, Tom definitely looked good. He did have 2 interceptions, but I'll definitely say one of them wasn't his fault at all. Hit the running back right in his hands and just, went through it. Leading rushing for them was Leonard Fournette on 32 yards for 0 touchdowns. Jones right behind him with 14 yards for 0 touchdowns as well. Leading receiver was Antonio Brown with with 121 receiving yards for 1 touchdown. Right behind him was Godwin with 105 receiving yards for 1 touchdown. And he had Gronk, who also got in the end zone twice. Mike Evans only had 24 receiving yards, but was pretty much getting double teamed and just had the attention of, the Cowboys, which allowed Brown and Godwin and Gronk to, open up the field. So just a Tom Brady performance and just a well-rounded W for the Buccaneers as they go 1-0. But like I said, the Cowboys did not look bad at all, and they showed me that, hey, they can compete with the best. So respect and shout out to the Cowboys. I know I don't do that enough, but hey, shout out to the Cowboys. But in all, man, I appreciate you guys for listening. Just wanted to bring you a recap of just the sports world, everything going on. Like I said, I'm super excited to get this thing kicked off. I will be bringing you guys weekly and daily news and just, keeping you guys intrigued. You guys let me know what you want to hear and what you want me to talk about. But like I said, I will be bringing these recaps to you weekly. As in all, peace, love, and I want you guys to stay blessed. Thanks for listening.